Hello and welcome again to Backpage. I'm Jody C. and today we're visiting with Lauren Kessler, who's a very fine writer, and she's written a fascinating book here called Counterclockwise, My Year of Hypnosis, Hormones, Dark Chocolate, and Other Adventures in the World of Anti-Aging. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Now I want to tell you something. You write an awful lot like one of my favorite writers, Mary Roach.
Ah.
As a matter of fact, you got an endorsement from Mary Roach on this book somewhere. There it is. I subscribed to a not very good magazine for way too long, years ago, because Mary Roach wrote for them. She's so good and funny. And it's not that your style is just exactly, it's your own particular style, but it reminds me of Mary Roach, and I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Well, I take that as a compliment. I think what both of us do is we're very curious, and we are fascinated with how things work.
Yeah.
Science, the human body in this case.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that nobody has to lecture you about this.
That's true.
It has to be a page turner. You have to enjoy yourself and you have to laugh.
Yeah. Well, one article she wrote was about the killer bees coming up from Mexico, and so she went down to Texas and was in this killer bee outfit, and one bee was inside the thing with her and stung her in the nose.
Oh.
And all she wrote was, Madre de Dios, Mother of God. Anyway, so how did this occur to you to write about this world of anti-aging? Because you tried all of this stuff.
I tried much of this stuff, yes. It was an adventure. Well, I mean, a lot of different things. I mean, first of all, it's just the passage of time. So as one gets chronologically older, one thinks about how do you stay biologically youthful. And so I started messing around in that literature and looking at it, and to discover that we have an enormous amount of control over that, and that also the longer we live, that is our chronological age, the more differently we age. So we have a lot of control over our biological age, and our chronological age becomes meaningless. So I wanted to see what was out there. Like everybody else, I'm deluged by these huckster claims, not just in anti-aging, but in anything you can imagine. If you buy this, it will cure this.
Right.
And I have the privilege of being able to spend the time checking out those claims and finding out what does work and what doesn't.
So how did you finance it, for one thing? Did you get sponsors and you said to your publisher, for example, I'm going to spend a year doing all this and this and this? I mean, how did you manage to do it? Because some of these things were expensive. Some of the tests that you had to have run and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to do those things that a normal human being would do, but occasionally I didn't. As a nonfiction writer, I've been a writer for a long time, and I have a literary agent, and I am financed through advances from my publisher. So yeah, I'm funded in the writing and researching of every book that I do.
Okay, good. So what was the most fascinating one to you?
Well, I think the most fascinating idea that came through was the extraordinary difference between chronological age and biological age. Okay, that at the end of the book, I go to my high school reunion, and I'd actually never been to a high school reunion before. And not very many people, unless they go to something like a high school or college reunion, are in a small confined space knowing that everybody in that space is their age. It's an unusual circumstance. And so all of the stuff that I had been reading about how we age absolutely came together at that moment when I looked out and I saw with these 115 people that some people, and when I say looked, I'm going to say looked 35, some people looked 70, and nobody in that room was either 35 or 70. I don't mean did they have crow's feet or did they have gray hair. I mean how they stood, their affect, the vivacity of their, of what they, so I think that was the most surprising thing.
Don't you sit there going, ooh, shaggy telomeres? Because the telomeres are the little things at the end of your DNA strands that will get shaggy, and then you begin to age. Isn't that right? Isn't that what I read?
Well, they shorten. Yes,
Yeah,
they're
like
like protective caps on the end of your chromosomes.
Right.
And you can measure them because smaller telomeres mean that that those strands are older, and longer ones, more protective ones, that it's younger. You actually have some control over the, so, and I should say that I did get my telomeres tested. It was very expensive, and it's not anything that I would suggest anybody do for at least the next few years while they figure out the testing, because it doesn't need to be that expensive. And when you get the results, you don't know what you're being compared to, because the public testing is so new that you just don't know, am I being compared to 20 people or 2,000 people? Are they men? Are they women? You don't get that information.
Okay. One of the things that I read about in here, and that it just sounded like torture to me, was the calorie restriction diet.
Yeah.
And I saw in Portland they did some news segment on that, and it just doesn't look healthy to me. I mean, I can't imagine spending most of my life feeling hungry. Clearly, I can't imagine that. But I mean, it just feels like torture,
Yeah, well, I should say it is healthy. Of all of the things, all of the claims for supplements or injections of hormones and that kind of stuff, the one thing that works in human beings, not in lab mice, but in human beings, is calorie restriction.
Yeah.
Now, we're not talking about being on a diet. We're talking about reducing the number of calories that your body needs, not some general thing, by 30%, while still getting every single nutrient, protein, fiber, everything you need. It's very hard to do.
Yeah.
Do you feel hungry all the time? I really don't know, because I couldn't do it. But people and there's only a few thousand people who are even trying this.
And you couldn't do it because it was so labor intensive.
Well, a couple of things. One is it's really hard to figure out how to get everything in those few calories, especially if you're like a 25-year-old male athlete and you have 4,000 calories to mess around with, and you need to reduce them 30%, that's one thing. But if you're a middle-aged woman and you have 1,500 calories and you have to reduce them 30% and still get everything, and you have to count everything, and then you also have to deal with how your family is liking this, which they're not. So yeah, it is difficult for a person to do, but it is the one proven turn back the clock thing that you can do.
Yeah. Well, I always think about what this vet that I knew said: if you want your dog to live a long time, get a mutt, keep him lean. And so anyway.
Lean. There are these biomarkers. Another thing that I discovered is that if you're trying to figure out what your biological age is. Everybody knows what their chronological age is. Very few people, nobody probably knows what their biological age is.
That's the kind of thing we see on Dr. Oz.
Kind of, yeah. So some of those markers, biomarkers, everybody does know. They just haven't put them all together. Like your resting heart rate would be a biomarker. Your blood pressure, the ratio between your good and bad cholesterol, not your cholesterol number, but the ratio between the good and bad, and telomere length, for example, hot and cold sensitivity, and all sorts of lung capacity, fitness, all that sort of stuff. It's labor intensive to do that, and bone density. There's all these testing things that you can do. And I think that was, to go back to your very first question, a revelation to me that there were ways of measuring the biological, the health and youth of the body, system by system. And that you could, which I did in the book, attempt to manipulate those numbers by physical activity, by what you ate, by your attitude, there's things like that.
So how long did it take you to write were you writing the book as you were doing each of these different tests and things like that? Were you writing as you went along, or did you compile all of this information and then a year later go, okay, I've got it here now?
No, both.
You did both of those, okay.
There were some chapters that were written as I went along. I have a chapter in there in superfoods, and I just declared May Superfoods Month, and I kept a diary, for lack of a better term, and as I was monitoring what I ate and why I ate that way and how I felt and what people were saying to me, I was sort of typing up notes, which became really the chapter as I was doing it. But other chapters needed to sit a while, and for example, I went to the World Anti-Aging Conference in Las Vegas, and so I took a lot of notes there, but there were all kinds of, there's all kinds of research that I wanted to do that I heard about there that I needed to do before I actually wrote that.
That seems like an odd place to have an anti-aging conference.
Oh, it's the perfect place.
I know, but when you think about, you know, I mean, it's like drinking and smoking is almost a constant thing there in I would think they'd do the anti-aging conference in Boulder or Eugene or, you know.
If you thought of anti-aging in the way that I would love people to think of anti-aging, which is the inside, the biological health of your body from the inside out. If you think of anti-aging as what's the mask that you're presenting to the world, then Las Vegas is a perfect place. It's a synthetic place. Yeah.
Wow. Hey, if you're just tuning in, I'm Jody C., and this program is Backpage, and we're visiting with Lauren Kessler, who's written a book called Counterclockwise, which is about anti-aging and all the different techniques that she found out about and some of which she tried. Trying to teach us how to turn back the clock, maybe live longer and feel better while we're doing that. So what else did you learn? What did you learn about you?
Well, I learned a lot. I certainly learned that even though I have deeply researched this field, I can be every bit as much of a sucker as the next person, wanting that quick fix, wanting that way to, manipulate lean body mass and fat, which is a huge biomarker. So I think that that's interesting because you think, well, I'm smart, or somebody would think, I'm smart, I read, and I can make a good decision. But sometimes when all of this stuff, you're just floating in the sea of this stuff, you sometimes don't make a good decision. I learned that even though I considered myself a physically active person, by which I mean I belong to a gym and I do my 1 hour workout at the gym, or I'll take a bike ride or I run. That the research is now showing that since the rest of the day I spend sitting in front of a computer, writing or talking on the phone or whatever, that I'm almost negating that 1 hour that I thought I was so proud of myself for. Yeah, I know. Yeah, so the trick...
you have to do it at the end of the day and that way it'll count?
No, you don't give up that 1 hour, but you don't fool yourself into thinking that because I do 1 hour of physical activity, that makes me a physically active person. What you need to do, and what I needed to do, and what I am trying very hard to do, is to integrate physical activity into my entire life, into my social life, into my leisure time, into let's meet for lunch. Well, maybe let's not meet for lunch. Let's, have a walk and talk. Let's get together with this couple for dinner. Well, maybe let's go hiking with this couple. So which is, you have to have a partner that is interested in doing this, but just those ways. Or I now I have a smartphone, and every hour it annoyingly whistles at me. So that I have to, and I put the phone far enough away so I actually have to get up to turn off the whistle. And that cues me to, you've been sitting for an hour, you now need to do something for 5 minutes. And sometimes I will be as unimaginative as doing 50 jumping jacks. And sometimes I'll chase the cat around the house. Or I'll go collect the garbage and take it outside. Just something where I'm moving. Because it is possible to just sit, especially if you're in a zone writing or researching, for 3, 4, 5 hours. And that bit in the gym, doesn't make up for that.
That's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
Now I was watching a tape or a video on Facebook the other night, and it was an interview with a lady scientist who talked about just the physical act of standing up. Like if you need to do that, if you need to get up and move, Just get up. Don't use the arms of the chair. Just get up. And she talked about how much more good that did for you. And she was one of the women who developed exercise programs for the astronauts. You know. But, you know, in 1994, that was the 25th anniversary of the first moonwalk, okay?
Okay.
Which was 1969. And when I was a kid, the astronauts were America's finest. I mean, they were young and strong and handsome and smart, you know. There was nobody in better shape than these guys. So I'm watching this on public television. 25 years later, there's John Glenn and Wally Schirra and Scott Carpenter and all these guys. They're all sitting around the table. And they're all these little hunkered over guys with bald heads. And I thought, so what is the point of all of those sit-ups if 25 years later they're still going to look like the rest of us? You know?
Oh, but you know, I don't know if John Glenn was there, but at 77, you know, John Glenn went into space and he looked pretty darn good.
Yeah, he did. He still looks pretty good, and he's in his 90s now. But
so the point is not to live long. The point is to live well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so while they were doing all of those sit-ups and stuff, we hoped that they were enjoying themselves, but they were also having, you know, they were full of vitality, and they were living that moment of their life to the fullest, which a whole lot of people don't do, regardless of age.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when you get older, things do happen, but revelation from the world of anti-aging, 70% of how we age and how quickly we age is within our control, and only 30% is genetically determined.
See, now isn't that something? I mean, really, that's something to hang on to. That's good information to have, you know, when you talk about that. Now, how'd your husband and your daughter do with all of this?
Well,
were they troopers, or they get bored with it?
I live with a teenage daughter, and
no, they hate everything.
They hate everything, so it doesn't really make much difference one way or the other what I do. So I'm happy to be ignored. And my husband has learned to put up with my immersion experiences, I guess I would say. He is a science writer himself, so that was great because we could talk about the science together. But when I was on my month of superfoods, that was me alone. So if it was my night to make dinner, I made my superfoods dinner, and then I made dinner for the rest of the family. That was different. I tried not to force people.
So what were the superfoods that you liked? I mean, blueberries is a superfood, right?
Yes. Yeah. So what I did for that month is I looked at some very credible sources, Mayo Clinic kinds of sources, and I think I looked at 7 or 8 sources, and then I looked at what they listed as their 10 most the best 10 superfoods, and then I found the 10 most common ones mentioned by everybody, and they are common foods except for quinoa. There's things, so blueberries, yogurt, salmon, broccoli,
walnuts.
Apples, well, some sort of nuts. Some people say walnuts, some people say almonds, and I made my 7 days just of those 10 superfoods, and I liked all of them. And then I went for my next 7 days. I looked at the next 10 top superfoods, which allowed me to use olive oil on my salad, which was excellent, and opened the door to dark chocolate. So that's a good door you want to open. And then I looked at the exotic superfoods. That's where the scams come in. That's where the hucksterism comes in.
Right.
So people are paying, you know, $40 an ounce for a dried berry from Peru, because it is the best antioxidant thing in the world, when actually an apple has just as much stuff as that, you know. So, and then I tried a raw foods diet for the last month.
How'd you do with that?
Not great.
Oh. Why was it so hard?
Well, if you think of raw foods as just salad and fruit smoothies, which is what I originally thought, I think no problem, I love both of those. But actually, if you're a true raw foodist, you attempt to make food that appears to be what other people who are not raw foodists eat out of uncooked plant matter. So I made a raw food lasagna, and you can't use cheese because it's processed, and because it's dairy. And so you make a nut cheese, which takes 3 days to make and tastes terrible. And of course, you can't use pasta because it's also, so you have thin, very, very thin pieces of zucchini, just fine. Anyway, you put it all together and it really was, my family found it inedible. And I ate a little bit of it and I thought, well, maybe it just needs to be cooked. And so I cooked it, which is of course against it, and it was not any better. I think the problem was, either decide to eat cheese or decide not to eat cheese, but don't make something like pretend cheese, because it just doesn't work out.
Yeah. Wow. I have a friend who was on the raw foods diet, and she was like, oh, this is the best thing, but she wound up getting really sick, with some muscle thing. And I was like, jeepers, get some bacon and eggs, man. Do something, not this. But anyway, I mean, she got better eventually, but it took a long time. She was very ill.
That's too bad. Well, the thing about a raw foods diet is that it really is, if people feel good on it, which some people do, you have to look at what you're not eating. And if you're not eating junk food, if you're not eating fried food, because you're not eating cooked food, if you're not eating processed food, if you're not eating, white flour, white sugar, etc., then whether you cook your vegetables or process your fruit is sort of a minor concern, because all the stuff you're not eating is making you feel better. So I certainly believe in a diet for health that excludes some of the things that I mentioned, but that doesn't mean that you have to not cook anything.
Yeah. So once you got done with all of your research for this book, did you go back to
My
regular
old
way
bad
of cooking?
habits.
Yeah. Well, maybe, but did it affect you enough that you went, oh gosh, we're making a major turn here, family, follow me?
Well, it affected me, as I was saying before, in terms of my physical activity. I no longer feel very proud that I do my 1 hour. I work really hard to do more than that. It affected my friendships, because my friendships are now very much around physical activity. And those people that are, that don't share that with me, I spend a far less time with than I used to. It affected my eating, it affected my eating in the sense that now that I know what the top 20 superfoods are, I actually have a list on my refrigerator of the top 20, and I go through at the end of the day and I mentally check off how many of them did I include.
Wow.
And so if I have a 5 or a 6 superfood day, that's a good day.
Well, I just recently got, it's called a NutriBullet. You see them on infomercials. I'm a sucker for an infomercial. And I actually didn't order this one for me. My partner got it for me, but I'm like, really? And so I've been trying to see how many, I put in some kale and some grapes and some strawberries and blueberries, and then it tastes really good, I mean, I'm throwing some walnuts and grind it all up, and it just makes a wonderful smoothie. And we've got a blueberry bush out and back, and some strawberry plants and stuff like that. But I thought, wow,
That sounds
this
good.
is so healthy.
Yeah.
Hope it doesn't make me sick, but seem to be doing okay so far. But anyway, it's
Well, so what you just said, though, is one area we haven't talked about at all, which is attitude. And this is good for me. I hope it doesn't make me sick. I think that one of the biggest changes that I'm trying to instill in myself, and the change that I see that society would have to make, is the notion of the stereotype of old and the stereotype of young.
Yeah.
And when you reach a certain age, whatever that age is, whether it's a woman over the age of 35, or if it's that 65 retirement age, if you think that age to yourself, if you think, well, now it's time, I can't really do what I used to do, and now I'm going to slow down, or now it's time for me to move back from things. I mean, maybe it is for other reasons, but not because of your chronological age. You know, so if
Yeah.
you have the, I mean, I think it is an attitude toward life that is open to surprise, that is resilient, that maintains a level of curiosity, that is, you know, really do open your eyes in the morning and say, you know, I'm going to do something interesting today. Life is full of interesting things to do, and I'm going to do some interesting things, as opposed to, you know, not having the either physical energy or the stamina or just the wherewithal to look at life that way. That will make you old on top of everything else that's making you old.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was talking about age. My partner's mom was down visiting from Canada, and she's 96, you know, and it made me start thinking about, how do I want the last third of my life to be? And I really, since none of us are getting out of here alive, I'd like to go on the golf course, you know, elderly but still strong, okay? And I'm about 100 yards out. I hit this incredible 7-iron shot. It sails up like this and can point one hit on the green and plop right in the cup. And when I'm busy going, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, yay, me, I go, and then fall over.
Yep.
That's not so bad.
That is excellent.
You
That's
know?
actually called the compression of morbidity. See? And so what it is you reach some level of physical, emotional, psychological resilience and strength, and you hold on to it as long as you can, healthy, 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 dead.
Yeah.
Like that. Instead of here and then,
then,
oh, it's getting a little worse, and
I
my
know.
quality of life, and you know. So yeah, keel over on the golf course.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'd be okay with that. So where can people get this book? Because we're going to have to wrap up pretty soon here.
On sale everywhere, as they say.
Okay, good.
I have a blog site that is counterclockwise.book.com.
Okay.
And so I would love people to take a look at the ongoing, the way that I separate the hope and the hype in the website. But I also mention it because there's clickable things for Amazon, for Powell's, for Barnes & Noble, and pretty much your local bookstore, which one wants to support one's local bookstore.
We absolutely want to support our local bookstores. Well, we're going to have to ride on out of here. I'm Jody C. This program is Backpage. We've been visiting with Lauren Kessler about her new book, Counterclockwise. Be sure to join us again next time as we take another peek at the back page. And remember, we're all in this together. More the same than different. Do your best.